Kelp is a beautiful underwater growth. It forms underwater gardens, dense jungles, but sometimes graveyards. To swim through a kelp forest, a diver needs a good knife and plenty of experience, or he may end up like Dan Morgan. Dan Morgan and his wife, Ruth, loved diving, and diving together. They had new equipment, new spears, and hunting for bass seemed like great fun. The water was clear, the visibility good, but the fun didn't last long. Two miles away, I was busy checking out Dr. Barr, a professor of marine biology, and two of his postgraduate students in skin diving, before embarking on an underwater expedition. Our schedule for today included underwater communication, by hand signals, by Morse code, and emergency action. Although hand signals have not been standardized yet, I teach my students a number of easily understood signs which are finding acceptance among many divers. This one means swim to the right. This one means halt. One of the most important distress signals underwater is the one to indicate trouble with air supply. Dr. Barr immediately understood my signal and in 40 feet of water offered to share his air with me. Sound carries well underwater, and the metal air tank of the scuba diver makes an excellent instrument for sending Morse code. Although my students had passed their Morse code test in a dry classroom, it was essential to test their ability to send and receive tapped communications under operational conditions. The vital importance of underwater communication was to be illustrated for my students that day, because within an hour, the life of a scuba diver would be saved or lost, depending on his ability to send a call for help under the surface of the sea. It was 4:45 when we surfaced, just in time to receive an urgent call from the Coast Guard asking me to render assistance to a lady in distress. Within minutes, we had rounded Crag Point and had the Morgan boat in sight.
He was dragged under. We were swimming and...
Who was dragged under?
My husband. We were spearfishing and I came to the
Just try to
surface
answer
and he
my
was...
questions, huh? Was he wearing scuba?
Yes.
How many tanks?
One. But Mr. Nelson...
When he went in, did he have a full tank of air?
Yes.
How long was he in before he was dragged under?
Well, just a few minutes, maybe 3, maybe 4 minutes.
How long has it been since he disappeared?
About 15 minutes. And he hasn't come up yet.
There's some binoculars in my locker. Go get him and start looking. Search for anything on the surface, especially bubbles.
Well, I should have swam down to him. I should have tried to untangle him from the line. I should have tried to get the thing out of the way.
Stop it. I'm sorry. If you want to help us find your husband, you better keep your head. Tell me, what happened?
We were just a few feet below the surface of the water. Right over there. Suddenly, a bass swam by. It was huge. Dan fired his spear gun. It struck. It started to go in that direction.
To the point, huh?
But first I went to the surface and I swam up. And I saw the fish. And then I saw Dan, and he was all tangled up in the line. He tried to free himself with his knife, but he lost it. Then the fish pulled him down under and took him over towards the point.
You see anything?
Nothing yet, Mike.
Nothing, Mike.
Nothing here, Mike.
You know how to handle a twin outboard, Dr. Bonner?
Got one at home just like it.
All right, good. Now, from what Mrs. Morgan tells me, her husband disappeared somewhere between here and the point. Now, you take the outboard and parallel my course about 25 yards to that side, okay?
Right.
You go with him, Hines.
Right, Mike.
And use those glasses.
But if Dan hasn't come up yet, is there still hope?
He has a good 30 minutes of airlift. We'll find him in time. Now, let me try those glasses. You take the wheel, will you? Keep a sharp watch for equipment they might have jettisoned.
Hey, Mike, over there.
How far?
About 100 yards. There's a lot of bubbles coming to the surface.
Yeah. Straight ahead, toward the point.
Within 3 minutes, our boats had reached the bubbles, which were probably coming up from Dan Morgan's air tanks. We were ready to dive.
Let's go, huh?
We had no trouble following the stream of bubbles downward, but 20 feet below, we were stopped short. The bubbles had disappeared. But that wasn't too alarming. An underwater current might easily have swept the bubbles out of their original path. I swam down with a marker buoy and line to mark our position. I motioned to my partners to remain below and search while I went up for more equipment.
Did you find him?
No, not yet. Doctor, throw over the reel and line. We're gonna have to do some looking.
But the bubbles, didn't you follow them?
Currents do funny things sometimes. The bubbles just disappeared.
If you need help, you yank on the marker cord. Right, Mike?
You're a good student, Doctor.
I came down with a reel and a line, because an underwater search has to be systematic. You must leave no inch of the bottom uncovered and must not cover any part of the ground twice. One sure method is the circular search, swimming around the reel at different distances from the center. Not air bubbles from Morgan's tank, but natural gas, escaping from a fissure in the ocean floor. The gas well discovery meant nothing. Uppermost in our minds was what this disastrous news would mean to Ruth Morgan. It was up to me to break the bad news to Ruth Morgan while my students brought up the real. I knew in my heart that we had very little hope. Time was against us. The search pattern had to be carefully laid out.
No. But the bubbles, didn't you follow them?
It was from a natural gas well.
Oh, then he's lost. We'll never find him.
Hold on now. There's still time. You still got air. Can't be far away.
Did you find him?
No!
I found something. See the initials on it.
DM. What's your husband's first name?
Dan, it's his. I know it.
Where'd you find it?
I marked it with a buoy.
Hey, Mike. Found the reel.
Good. Hey, Wilson, you take the wheel again, huh?
Right, Mike.
Follow bar.
Right.
See the marker that Bar left?
Yeah.
What's the matter? Kelp.
It's bull kelp.
It's been dragged into an underwater forest of bull kelp.
You know, this is something that I haven't checked you out on. Swimming in kelp is going to be plenty dangerous. If you get panicky and forget what I've taught you, you're going to be in trouble. All right. Can't talk you out of it. Come on. Let's get going. Take out your knives. We'll swim with them in our hands.
Mr. Nelson, I'm going with you.
It's too dangerous.
But my husband's down there. I've got to help. Don't you understand?
All right, you swim in a search path right next to me. And swim with your knife in your hand, huh?
Well, but
In case you get tangled with kelp.
We marked the search area, getting ready to dive. Less than 50 yards away from us, there was a rising stream of air bubbles. These bubbles rose from Dan Morgan's air tank. They never reached the surface. They were caught by the imprisoning kelp leaves. The entangling fish line, which had dragged him into the trap, held him a prisoner. Without his knife, which he had lost when he speared the fish, he couldn't cut himself loose. The search began, first near the markers and at prearranged levels. We swam down through clear water just outside the edge of the kelp. Next to the danger of entanglement in kelp is the danger of losing your sense of direction. Against this, of course, the diver's best defense is his compass. Each of my students wore one, would swim a straight search path through the kelp on a course of 95 degrees. Mrs. Morgan, having no compass, had to guide herself by watching me. The problem now was to swim a straight course. In my anxiety to locate Morgan, I didn't notice that I had lost Mrs. Morgan. Tapping sound. Was the missing man tapping out a distress signal? But from where? Underwater sound seems to come from all directions. But the tapping noise didn't come from the imprisoned man. He also heard it and tried to see from where it was coming. Although he wasn't more than 20 yards from me, he couldn't see me, and I couldn't see him. A sudden surge of kelp dragged the air hose from her mouth, but I knew that I could reach her in a few seconds. The trapped man listened for the tapping to start again and hoped that it signaled the approach of some rescuer. But the tapping had ceased, and no one came. I could see that she had swallowed some water and began to guide her back out of the kelp. I started a service with her while my students continued the search. Time was growing short. Less and less light was penetrating the underwater jungle, and Dan Morgan's air supply must have been at the very end. When Dan Morgan had heard the tapping noise, his hope had revived. If anyone were within earshot, they could hear his tapping too. His hand strained toward a stone which was just beyond his reach. Because of the failing light, my students had decided to turn back without completing a search of their paths. They, too, started for the surface.
How do you feel? Are you all right? Do you feel better?
Yes. I'm going back down.
Listen, we almost lost you once. Let's not try it again.
Mike!
Did you find anything?
No. The kelp gets thicker the further in you get. We've got to find flares or something.
Come aboard, all of you.
Oh, you're not calling off the search, are you?
For them, yes.
Oh, but Mr. Nelson, you can't
It's getting dark.
Well, but they're all willing.
They're my students. Their lives are my responsibility.
You just can't leave him out there.
Doctor, give my portable light for me, huh?
Right, Doctor.
There's still time for one more try.
I'm going with you.
No.
I'm going.
Hold it.
I'm coming. Please find him.
Time, 5:30. It would soon be totally dark, and Morgan would be out of air. Again, the sound of tapping. Had Ruth followed me? The tapping sound seemed to come from all directions. Suddenly, I saw something in the distance. The tapping seemed louder. Once I had located Dan Morgan, it took me only seconds to free him and take him to the surface.
Dan, darling.
It's all right, honey. It's all right. Let's show off, huh? Thanks. Hi there. I'm Lloyd Bridges. Skin diving is certainly a lot of fun, and it's full of adventure. See some more of it again next week, huh? When there'll be another excursion into that fabulous underwater world of Sea Hunt.